Sneakers and Cleats, the podcast.
Let's get on to UTSA here. They ended their season 6-6 after losing to Army this past weekend in a game that they were winning in the third quarter, actually winning in the fourth quarter, early on in the fourth quarter, and then it kind of all went to hell after that. They lost 29-24. Real quick postmortem before we look big picture about the program. I thought that the last four games were obviously their best games of the season. They played some of their best football in the last four games. Even the Tulsa game, they played really well. Excuse me, even though they didn't win that game. The 4th and 1 call that Jeff made at the beginning of the fourth quarter was really, I don't get it. I don't get it. As Don tries to spill his Diet Coke. 4th and 1, 16-yard, their own 16-yard line, and you don't get it. And the game's basically over after that. Army goes down and scores. Owen McCown throws a pick on the next possession. Army scores again. You have a chance. They score a touchdown, and then you have a chance to score at the end to win the game, and then Owen throws his third or second pick of the game. So kind of snowballed from there. But
yeah,
what was your guys' thoughts? I know did you ask Jeff about that last night about his call?
Not on
camera. Not on camera.
He takes responsibility for it. But look, he's like, hey, we're going in there. They're 10-1. You know, we've already got our bowl win. You know, let's be aggressive. He says he regrets the call that he made, not going for it, but the play that he called. And
yeah, I mean, it was an inside zone basically.
All analytics, and believe it or not, analytics said go for it there, and they go with the analytics, and a lot of coaches go with the analytics. Now, for 100 years, that's insane to go for it on 4th and 1 in your own 16 because you always think of what's the worst possible outcome, not what's the best possible outcome. The best possible outcome is you get a first down on your own 16. That doesn't guarantee you anything on the next 3 downs to continue the drive. Now you might, but the worst thing that can happen is you give them the ball inside your 20. So I would always punt the football there. And I was thinking that as I'm watching it. But I understand his mentality, where they were in the season, where they were on the road, what they were trying to establish. I think it cost them the game.
Yeah, 100%.
Because I think they can win that game if they punt that football away.
Yeah, I mean, at the time, they were leading by 1 point. It's early in the fourth quarter. I think it was literally the first play of the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
And it just didn't – I was watching it, and I was like, whoa. Especially because he called the punt team out first.
Yeah.
Punt team came out first, the quarter ends, and then he comes out with the offense. And I'm like, wait a second here.
He's done that.
We actually doing this? We're really going to let this happen?
He's done that a few times over his career here. He goes for it a lot. And, guys like Zachary Franklin and Oscar Cardenas have made him look like a hero.
Well, he went for it early. He went for it earlier, 4th and 1, and Devin McEwen scored the touchdown. It was a 21-yard touchdown, 4th and 1. But it was on the opponent's 21-yard line. Like the field position matters there.
Sure.
And
always on your own 16.
Yeah. I mean, so this game aside, season ends 6-6. I think that's the worst record in Jeff's tenure here. If I'm remembering that correctly, I think the previous worst record was 7-5. Chuck, how will you look back on this season for the UTSA Roadrunners?
I will look back at it as how the heck did they do that? I mean, again, we've talked about the injuries that they've had to the starters and to the depth and how they had to play differently for a couple games because they had no wide receivers and, they went with, heavy jumbo sets and all that and still managed to find a way to be not only competitive but win some games that they probably shouldn't have. I mean, to me, and I know we've talked about this before too, I don't know how that you can say that this isn't Jeff Traylor's best coaching job.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Given all of the things that went against them this year, the last thing I saw after the Tulsa game was them flipping this and running it the other way. That was, talk about best case scenario, worst case scenario. There's no way anybody would have envisioned them doing what they did to essentially run the table and then, basically have a possession, get away from them in the Army game from not, running the slate there at the end, given the competition. I mean, you beat a top 25 team. That was at your own home. This last weekend was against a top 25 team. And, he knows his team. It was tough sledding all day offensively. I'm sure his thought process was kind of like what Elko was thinking in College Station on the goal line. We haven't done anything all day on offense. This is our best chance to score. And maybe he was thinking this is our best chance to get a first down, run more clock, at least two more minutes is going to come off. There's a lot of things that go on to making that call. And yeah, it's a bad call when you don't get it, but certainly I can understand. And I kind of applaud the raw nature of saying, F it, let's just go for it and see if we can do it.
Yeah, they're 6-6. Here's the thing that I look back on. That's a 9-win team. The Rice game was won on a lucky catch on the last play of the game. The meltdown at Tulsa was because all 4 of your starting DBs got hurt, and you're playing walk-ons who've never played a snap before, and that snowballed on them. But they were way up in that game. East Carolina was a game that they could have easily won. And Army, they were competitive. To show that they were competitive with Memphis and Army, with 12 starters out for the year, 18 starters out week to week. One would come back, the other would be out. And to do that without Oscar and without Joe Evans and without you name it. 5 receivers, 4 starting offensive linemen, 4 starting defensive linemen, shows you, like, if they would have been healthy, what they could have been. Jeff said preseason, he goes, I think we'll be 6-1 when we come here to play Memphis. And if we can get that one, we might be in the conversation for the playoff. That was preseason. So that's what he thought of his talent. And the fact that they were competitive with Memphis and Army with second and third string talent shows you if he can keep them, this program is built to last.
Not only that, those guys that were backups that were then thrust into starting roles, I think proved that they can play ball, right? So now think about what your depth looks like next year.
Let's take a listen to Coach Traylor last night on his overview of this season, starting with his thoughts on Owen McCown and how Frank Harris helped him in his conversation last night with Don Harris.
Frank was good for Owen. Owen got to be in the room with Frank, and he saw how Frank handles himself, and they were good for each other, and they're still very close to this day. I would also say Frank never had the injuries to all of his receivers. He at least had some of those guys out there. I would say Owen basically carried our team offensively most of the year because so many different pieces around him. But in the meantime, we got Amador back as a freshman. McEwen's a sophomore. Overmeyer's a freshman. Houston Thomas is a sophomore. Brandon High is a sophomore. 4 of our offensive linemen are coming back. And our quarterback, we got 2 more years with him. So the future really is bright. And I am so proud of how my seniors, and those guys are all on defense, held us together and rallied here late in the season for our 5th consecutive bowl.
His draw always makes me laugh. A sophomore. I think he's right, though. Owen, I think out of this season, you found your quarterback. I don't think that last offseason they wanted to bring people in and they wanted to bring in competition. Owen won the job. I think that Owen had the job the entire time. That's just my opinion. I don't know if
he's different. Yeah.
And he doesn't need all of the NIL money because his dad has 16 years of NFL paychecks so he's fine. You want some money probably for your quarterback like that, but you don't need the $2 million, $3 million that Michigan is giving to this Underwood kid or anything like that to keep Owen around.
Or the $1,000 a month that a lot of these kids do need to eat.
Right.
He comes from that background. He also comes from a family where Jeff Traylor coached all of those dads and uncles in high school. So that family, that's the only reason he came here, was his relationship with Jeff after he transferred out of Colorado. So Jeff has told me that's the one guy that's not leaving.
Mm-hmm.
He's not leaving. He's with me. And so that's really good for UTSA.
Yeah. You also got to talking with Jeff about the revenue sharing aspect of this. And for people who don't know, in July, schools will now be able to pay students directly, and not just through collectives. You'll still be able to use collectives, but you'll be able to actually revenue share with your team up to a certain amount of money. And so you got into that a little bit with Jeff last night as well.
And I've had positive conversations with our administration. We are going to revenue share. I just don't know exactly what the number is yet, and signing day is coming up Wednesday. We're not going to have to pay top dollar to keep all of them, but we got to make it fair for those guys to stay here, or we're going to lose them. And I really don't want to be a AA or a AAA farm system just to develop players. I want to win championships here. Our city deserves it, and we know how it feels. We've seen it done, and we're so close to being there again.
So he explained what's happening, and I know people think they know what NIL does. I thought I knew what NIL is and all that, but you're right. July, there's a court case that is going to be determined, and it's not even close. It's going to allow member institutions to pay $11 million or less maximum to football players from the institution. Texas, A&M, Alabama, they're going to max that out. They have the money, and they're definitely going to give all $11 million a year. That's going to be their salary cap for their football team. For everybody else, you choose as an institution, how much are we going to dedicate to football? And Memphis and Temple and East Carolina are already saying 3 to 5. Memphis is going at 5 or something like that. UTSA's entire collective between 2-0 Inspired and all those guys, Bob Wills, their entire cap was $500,000. Memphis paid their quarterback $1 million this year, Shane Hennigan, $1 million. So that's what they're up against. So Jeff thinks with $2 or $3 million they can be in the game, but that money is going to have to come from Taylor Amy and the institution, and that's what he said. He's had some positive conversations. I think things are starting to turn where the university and administration is being more receptive to that way of thinking. But that's what it's going to be. It's going to be Yankees and Dodgers, in each conference. You're going to say, well, Memphis keeps winning the American. Why? Well, they've got a $5 million payroll, and you got a $500,000 payroll if you're, another institution. So that's what
Wild West continues, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. I mean, then you're talking about, when does Title IX lawsuits start happening? If the money's not being dispersed equally amongst the athletes or between the sports. I mean, I'm just really fascinated to see where it all goes. And the fact that there's very little oversight on any of this stuff is still just mind-boggling.
Yeah, I mean, and UTSA is at that kind of turning point right now, right? Like either you're going to make a decision to invest in your football team or you're not.
Right.
You're going to make a decision to give Jeff the resources that he needs because pound for pound, he's one of the best coaches in the country, or you're not. And you're going to lose Jeff and you're going to be a farm system for the rest of the league or the rest of the country.
Charlotte.
Yeah.
Right? Or somebody in that league that probably doesn't need to be in that league. Charlotte, somebody like that. But,
Don't talk bad about Charlotte like that.
Karen Aston, women's basketball, all those are very happy about the revenue sharing because those kids are going to get money too. And football, just so you know, at UTSA is the only sport that operates in the black. They make money. Every other sport loses money.
But that's the story at a lot of Division
men's
I, Division II
basketball.
campuses.
Men's basketball should make money.
Yeah, I mean,
other men's basketball.
But that's the
programs.
story among a lot of colleges throughout the country. Like
Yeah.
that's how my college was. That most colleges make money in
football
football,
drives
and
the bus.
football pays for the rest of the sport.
But ASU basketball makes money.
ASU basketball
Men's
should be
basketball.
ranked this week, but that's besides the point.
I just wanted to ask you guys a question. When you're looking at like what UTSA is trying to do, what's an example of a team that did it successfully, that came up from small ball or whatever and made it up to play with the big boys?
Them?
Boise, Central Florida.
James Madison this year or 2 years ago.
Who's that?
James Madison 2 years ago.
I think Boise's the best example.
I mean, UTSA too. I mean, it came up from nothing quicker than anybody that I can remember. And Texas State's doing a nice job too. And I don't know what the resources are there, but they become super competitive here the last
Central
couple
Florida
years.
with Blake Bortles like number 2 in the country? I think
remember that.
a few years back.
Blake Bortles.
Remember him?
Yeah, I have a funny story about him, but I'll save it for another day.